Alright, so what we have here is the LG 43UD79-B monitor. 4K, 60 Hertz, 43 inches. And here it is in the box. As you can see, it's got all the different features listed on the front. But more importantly, is how it's boxed. As we can see, it's got a pack of cables here on the top. Got a little set of booklets and a CD here. And if you take out this piece, get the styrofoam out of the way here, you can see that it's just kind of everything haphazardly floating around in here. But let's set it up on the desk and see what it looks like. Alright, as we can see, it comes in 4 different pieces. It comes with the base, comes with the stand, and it comes with a cover for the back, just to make everything look nice. And then of course the monitor is a separate piece. And here's the separate monitor piece itself, before being put together with everything else. And here's the monitor with the stand attached in the back. Still needs to have the base attached. 4 screws were required to screw it into place. Notice that it did come in its own little baggie. Here I am attaching the back panel to make it look nice. As we can see, the base attaches through this simple screw right here. You can use that just to get it most of the way in. I used a screwdriver just to finish it off. Okay, before we actually set up the monitor where it's going to finally go on this table here, let's take a look at everything that came in this large bag here inside the box. First off, there were 4 screws for mounting it to the stand, power cable, an HDMI to HDMI cable, a DisplayPort to DisplayPort cable. Notice that is the larger size, that is not the mini DisplayPort, that is the regular DisplayPort. Some sort of little bracket of some sort. A USB-C to USB-A type of adapter, a remote control, some batteries, and various manuals, and I suppose that's some type of driver CD. And here's the monitor all set up. It's on the base, taking up plenty of space. That device to its left is my UPS device. Going around to the back, you can see I already have the power cable plugged in. And as we can see here, it has a standard RS-232C port for various configuration options. It also has a HDMI 4K 30 port, another HDMI 4K 30 port, an HDMI 4K 60 port, a second HDMI 4K 60 port, a DisplayPort in, regular size, USB-C, a pair of regular USB, and a headphone jack. Currently have the screen hooked up to my MSI GS73VR notebook computer with a built-in GeForce 1060 card. And up here on the screen itself, we can see, if we get a little bit closer here. It is currently running at 4K. I have the zooming set at 100%, so everything's the size it should be. And I'm getting 60 Hertz. And all of this is over a USB-C connection. So that USB-C port is being put to good use here. And here we have a number of windows open. As you can see, everything is about the proper size, just a lot more of it. We can zoom in here and see that text is very readable. And all these different windows we can just move around wherever we want them. It's a lot of desktop space, and I feel very comfortable reading two websites side by side. As we can see, if we stretch this one out any larger, it's just more space than a web page even needs. And here we have Minecraft, the Java version running on Windows. As we can see, I currently have it set up for a render distance of 20 chunks. Smooth lighting set to maximum, graphics fancy, and so forth and so on. Now, to click down here and accept these options, as we can see, the game is currently already loaded up here. All the chunks are basically in memory now. Just standing here, I'm getting about 24 frames per second, give or take. Moving around, it's a little bit choppy. This is a 4K screen, so that's a lot of pixels to render. And the GeForce 1060 in my notebook computer, this is all it's capable of doing. Just to power things up here, I've taken a Thunderbolt 3 cable from my notebook computer, and in the back here we can see I've hooked it up to an eGPU box. The AKiTiO Node external GPU under Thunderbolt 3, and inside I have an NVIDIA GeForce 1080 Ti, top of the line. Connected to that card, located right here, I have a DisplayPort cable, which in turn is connected to the monitor itself, right back here. So, with that in mind, let's take another look at what we can get from Minecraft on this system. Here we are, looking at the exact same scene in Minecraft as we had loaded earlier. That version was running on the GeForce 1060 built into my notebook. This is now running on the GeForce 1080 Ti full-size graphics card inside of the eGPU. If you look up here, you'll see that it's currently looking at that same scene, doing about 165, 173 frames per second. I actually had to go up into the Minecraft setup menu and put the frame rate to unlimited so we could see just how high it would go. Now it's moving silky smooth. As I move it around, we'll take a look there at the frame rate. As you can see, it's still very high. let's fast forward to daytime. And here we are at daytime again. Just to go back into the menus here, under video settings, the render distance is at 20 chunks. Let's try moving that up a little bit. Let's see what maybe 26 chunks will do. Frame rate is unlimited now. We can mess with the GUI scale. That's auto. It becomes enormous. At small, it becomes really, really tiny. At normal, takes up about this much of the screen. And here it is at large, which is my favorite size. Now while it's busy building out these extra chunks, and take a look at my settings up here and what I have in the system. Currently I'm running an Intel Core i7-6700 HQ CPU. That is a quad core at 2.6 gigahertz. And I have, as it says right there on the screen, and I've mentioned before, a GeForce GTX 1080 Ti in the eGPU. Currently have it set up for a dedicated 8 gigabytes of memory just for this piece of software. The notebook has a total of 16 gigabytes. And over here, now that we've extended the chunk rate, how many chunks it shows at once, it's down to about 69, 70 frames a second. And it goes up and down. Now it's up to about 110. Backing off here, movement's still very smooth. Still drawing some areas as I look in those directions. And the frame rate is still pretty high. Low end of the triple digits, usually about 100, give or take 20. Just for grins and giggles, let's take a look here and max out the render distance at 32 chunks. Give it some time to render everything back out here, recreate those chunks. Per second are gradually sinking again as it continues to build more chunks. Again, 4K on a monitor this big, this game looks impressive. And frankly, I'm surprised it runs this fast. Big difference between the GeForce 1060 built into my notebook computer and the GeForce 1080 Ti that I have connected to it in the eGPU box. Rendering chunks. We look in this direction where things seem to be basically done rendering out. Just a little bit more popping up in the background. You see that it's settled down to about 80 frames per second. And it's still going down a little bit more, settling into the 70s. Well, you can certainly play with the settings to make this play as smooth as you want it to. If you have this type of setup, specifically this graphics card makes all the difference. Next up, let's see how the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition plays on a monitor this big with a powerful graphics card to back it. As we can see here, I have things set up ultra across the board, everything's turned on, view distance is maxed out. The only thing I haven't cranked all the way up is anti-aliasing. Frankly, I don't like the way that looks. Gives it a certain amount of blur, personal preference. Let's load that up and see how it looks. And here we are running Skyrim Special Edition at 4K. And as we can see up here in the Steam overlay, it is basically locked in at 60 frames per second. The way the game is actually programmed, they cannot get it to go faster than 60 frames per second. That's the most you can ever get, even if your monitor supports over 60 Hertz. This monitor is of course only 60 Hertz, so that does not matter here. As you can see, there is extreme detail. And even with all that extreme detail, it is a huge field of vision. Look around here and the motion is absolutely smooth. Again, zoom in, lots of detail. At the distance you'll be sitting from this, pixels are all but invisible. Only a little bit of stair stepping because I have a preference against anti-aliasing. This is again with every other feature cranked up to the max. Very impressive. Playing this game, it takes up just about your whole field of vision. It is a huge screen. And here is another game, Craft the World. It's currently set up with a 4K resolution. This is a two-dimensional game. See how this looks. Nothing too impressive as it's not 3D. The level of detail everywhere in the game is the same as it would be on any screen. But there's a lot of real estate. You can see a whole lot of what's going on at any given moment. Less scrolling around is necessary. And here I have the latest remake of Doom. As we can see in a typical indoor scene, the game says I'm getting about 72 frames per second. Again, that's connected to the GeForce 1080 Ti. Perfectly smooth. That's more frames per second than the 60 Hertz monitor can even show. Moving around, the frame rate is plenty high. And the current settings for that, as we can see, 4K. I actually have anti-aliasing cranked up, just for the sake of it. In advanced, here's the various other settings you can read for yourselves. Pretty much everything is cranked up to the max. And here I'm running Ashes of the Singularity. Under options, we can see that I have all the options cranked up to the max, except for anti-aliasing. Again, personal preference. Now I'm going to run the benchmark. See how that runs. Again, it will be running externally on my GeForce GTX 1080 10i card in the eGPU. Close-up view. Pulling back. Zooming back in here. Take a look at all that detail. Zooming back out again. Sound is coming from the monitor itself. Back out. So we can see here the average frame rate, all batches, was 53.3 frames per second. Average CPU frame rate was 75.6. The average frame rate normal batches was 65.2. Percent GPU bound, 98.9%. Average frame rate, medium batches, 56.8 frames per second. Percent GPU bound, medium batches, 96.3%. Average frame rate heavy batches 42.9 frames per second. Percent GPU bound heavy batches 100%. And all the game looks very playable at these frame rates. Again, a list of the various specifications of the system. For the next test, I'm going to do something a little bit different. DirectX 12 allows for two GPUs of different types that are not physically linked together in SLI mode to be run at the same time to increase frame rate. In this case, I'm going to have the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1080 Ti in the external GPU box run at the same time as the NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1060 built into my notebook that the external GPU is connected to. So let's see if this increases my frame rate even more. All other features are the same. Closeup. Zoom back out. As we can see here, average frame rate, all batches, 38 37.8 frames per second. Average CPU frame rate, all batches, 66.5 frames per second. Average frame rate normal batches, 38.5 frames per second. Average frame rate medium batches, 38 frames per second. Average frame rate heavy batches, 36.8 frames per second. Notice in the configuration I have two distinctly different graphics cards, one inside the notebook, one inside the eGPU, running at the same time. Here we are looking at the results of both benchmarks at the same time. First off, look at that wall of text. There's a whole bunch of text on the screen at once. It's all very legible at a regular viewing distance. This screen will be great for programmers and anybody else that puts a lot of text on their screen at the same time. Zooming in some more, notice that on the one that used just the eGPU with the GeForce 1080 Ti, the average frame rate was 65.18 frames per second. But on the system that used both the GeForce 1080 Ti and the GeForce 1060 built into the notebook computer, the frame rate fell down to 38.46. On all batches, it comes out the same. It took a serious hit to frame rates by running both graphics chipsets at the same time. No doubt some sort of limitation from running across the Thunderbolt 3 cable. Probably bandwidth constrained. So I would recommend that if you use an external graphics unit box, you only run the graphics card that's in it, not the integrated or dedicated graphics chipset in your notebook computer. Definitely don't try and run both at the same time. As we can see, connected to a PlayStation 4 Pro, currently set for 720p. The monitor does support resolution scaling, so we can take some smaller resolutions and grow them. Closing out of that message box, set it up for 1080p. And the screen scales 1080p up to fill the full screen. And as we can see here, well, like I say, it just doubles the resolution to fill the screen. Here's Horizon Zero Dawn running on the PlayStation 4 Pro. Move the character's viewpoint around, so forth. As we can see, the system is connected to a PlayStation 4 Pro. And here's the HDMI cable that came with the monitor hooked up into the proper port, the 4K 60 port. Now I have a Nintendo Switch hooked up to the system. It only goes as high as 1080p, though that's a limitation of the Nintendo Switch itself. Now, let's have it load up Mario Kart. Again, it fills the whole screen. Alright, for the next demonstration, I've hooked up my notebook computer running Windows, my notebook computer running Mac OS, my Nintendo Switch, and my PlayStation 4 Pro. As you can see, you can play all four of them at the same time. and each one of them has your own little quarter of the screen, each quarter of the screen running proper 1080p. Now there's all sorts of things you can do to modify things. Let's see if I can keep this straight. You use the menu connected to the remote control here, and you can go over to input list, and let's say you want to change what's at the top left corner. Right now the top left corner has the Nintendo Switch. Let's say we want to put the MacBook Pro on there. Just click that. The MacBook Pro is currently connected to HDMI 2, so we switch that to 2. And now the MacBook Pro is playing on the top left and the bottom right. And as you can see, moving this mouse cursor around takes effect on both screens. Now let's say you want your Nintendo Switch to then go down to the bottom right. At that point, you simply go back into the menu, you do input list, and let's go down to the bottom right option, click select, and since the Switch is hooked up to HDMI 1, and there we go. Now let's say you want to move the sound from the bottom right window to, let's say, the bottom left window. See what's World for the Overworld sounds like. At that point, you go back to the main menu, you go to input, go all the way down to sound out, and then you select the bottom left window. And now we're hearing War for the Overworld. At the same time you're listening to that, you can go right back to playing on the Nintendo Switch if you want. Or suddenly go back to the Mac to check out what's playing on the internet. Whichever screen you want to use, you can use all of them at the same time. This is one of the major selling points of this monitor. It allows one to take multiple monitors that clutter up one's desk and put all of them together into one big monitor. There are other options as well. You can go to input, picture beside picture, and picture in picture. And there are other options as well. Here we have the MacBook Pro and the PlayStation 4 Pro, both playing on the same screen. PlayStation 4 Pro being picture-in-picture. There are many options on this list. You could take quite some time going through them all. Here I'm modifying transparency. And as we can see here, you can see some of the background here on my MacBook Pro coming right through the screen on the PlayStation 4 Portable. You can see my mouse cursor going right behind that window. And you can change that transparency so that you can do two things at once. And if you need to drag something down into this corner, trash can, for instance. It remains visible just in case you must use an option there. Like I say, there are many options on this screen. It would take quite some time to go through them all. Quick settings, including the built-in volume. All the audio you've heard on this video has been produced by the screen. Various input options. And general settings. Picture is currently grayed out. And here we go with the screens as they were. Change sound out from the top left, back down to, let's say, the Nintendo Switch. And there we go. Mario Kart music playing once more. Scan back down to picture-in-picture. Try a different window. Takes a moment. Now let's change the size of the picture-in-picture to large. Takes up even more of the screen. You can still see the mouse cursor right through here as transparency is still turned on. Again, that could be turned off completely. And try the small size. Now it is much smaller. Still transparent as that feature has not been turned off. Let's move the box to the top left. That once again moves the PlayStation 4 Pro input to the top left. And if we would like to change that to, let's say, change that to the PC. Just go down here to display port. And that changes the main image. Let's try again for the top left image. And change that to, let's say, the Nintendo Switch, HDMI 1. And there we go. And the transparency is kept. As we can see here. Turn that off. Transparency all the way down. Enter. As we now see, transparency is off. Lots of functionality on this monitor. Now let's go back to regular mode. And we get to choose, put it back to the Windows desktop. on just one screen, such as this, the option for sound out is gray. It does not have an effect. So what happens if you use side-by-side view with two video game consoles? This is what the screen takes the 1080p feed, which cannot be changed, and scales them to fit on either side of the screen, taking up everything. Unfortunately, since it is hard programmed coming out of each system to do 1080p, it just ends up stretching them vertically, and it looks really strange. Just another what if, though. What happens if you have two console systems? In this case, a PlayStation 4 Pro and a Nintendo Switch playing in split screen from top to bottom. It scales this way. Looks a little strange, but there's another question answered. There is a solution to this problem, though. If you go into the menu to aspect ratio, for the top one, it's currently set to full wide. Change it to original, and as we can see, it's no longer stretched. So now we'll do it for the bottom half. Change that to original, and now the bottom console is no longer stretched. We now have the PlayStation 4 Pro at the top playing No Man's Sky, and the Nintendo Switch at the bottom playing Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now going back to the menu, let's see what happens if we change the picture-in-picture to side-by-side. And here we go. Both of them have retained their original aspect ratio. They have not been stretched. And since there's only two signals coming in side-by-side mode, that means that the view is vertically centered for each. This could be useful if you and one other person would like to play a multiplayer game together and each have your own system hooked up. You can sit side by side. Both screens, well, both the view areas, I should say, look to be a good size. Again, just another option for those of you out there that may have somebody else to play games with and feel that at the very top or bottom of the screen is a little too high or a little too low. In closing, I would like to say that overall this is an absolutely amazing monitor. If you're looking for a huge amounts of viewable screen, 43 inches worth, this is incredible. The 4K resolution makes everything very sharp, but at the same time, it does not make text too small to read if it's at normal scaling levels. If you're a programmer, this will give you massive walls of text, and the 60 Hz refresh rate is easy on the eyes. If you're a gamer and 60 Hz is acceptable to you, then this will give you a huge amount of real estate to look at. It almost takes up your whole field of vision when you're sitting up close to it like you would with a computer game. In Skyrim, for instance, your hands and sword are life-sized. It's very impressive. For anybody that's doing color correct work like professional artists, this will not show you as many colors as you'd like. It's not really designed for that purpose, but for general use, people that just want a huge amount of screen space and a lot of pixels with words that are the correct size for reading easily, this monitor is absolutely amazing, and for the price, $700 or less, it's hard to go wrong. It's the monitor that I've decided to keep for a good long while.